Welcome. Good morning on this Thursday morning, and we're just barely not even an hour into the trading session, and the markets have already been moving all over the place. It's been a pretty interesting start to the day. As a matter of fact, when you look at yesterday and we had that big, powerful move to the upside, it was consistent. It was strong. It withstood for the entire session. So it was a really strong, powerful move to the upside yesterday, and it was very consistent and directionally. It just continued to hold on. The acceleration happened, and then it was the pause, and then that's where the markets, for the most part, just held on to close to 350 to up 400 points to the most part, to the upside, which was a very impressive day. You had names like Disney. Gosh, the whole world seemed to have hated Disney at 100, but now suddenly we look at Disney as trading about 119. So a big, nice, powerful move there. Let's not forget, Disney was $50 off of the highs. It got cut by a third, and we all knew the story of what was going on and what was causing all of this and the closure of the parks, and now some of them are reopening in Asia and Europe. Anyway, an interesting story there, but something I highlighted not too long ago on the halftime report, and it seemed everybody wanted to hate on it. I still don't understand that, but Intel was moving to the upside yesterday. You had a lot of the different financials actually with a pretty strong day, but energy, Chevron, Exxon, really a big, powerful part of the Dow move that really moved up to about 375 points. But like I said, 350 to 400, that's where it just kind of hung out for the majority of the day. But a nice, big, powerful move. Now, oil continues this move, and it's been a fairly rapid move, quite honestly. It held on to and holding on to that $32 level as of yesterday. That was pretty nice to see. Gold was hanging around $17.50 for a while, and you wonder, is gold going to continue to move to the upside with the markets moving to the upside? That's an interesting question, and we're going to have an answer for that in just a minute. But yesterday, its financials were powering the markets to the upside. They were up over 2%. Then you look at the chips, 3.6% move to the upside, really strong across the board. You take your shot at any one of the semiconductor world and a lot of various names there, and you could see a pretty nice move to the upside. Energy, I mentioned the XLE. XLE was up over 4% yesterday. So energy, certainly, especially those big ones, the big names, really had a nice big move to the upside, understandably, as energy and oil prices just continue to move to the upside. Technology, not a bad day at all. It's last on the list right now of the short list that I've got, but that's up about 2%. So trailing financials, trailing energy clearly, trailing the chip space as well. So that was something that it was noticeable. I don't know that it was extreme by any stretch of the imagination, but the NASDAQ was kind of moving around yesterday again as well, but there were certain specific names that really were a huge part of that big move. And one of those names that stands out is Facebook. And Facebook had that paper just the other day, and we talk about short-term option paper. We're talking about May 22nd expiry. Every time I look at unusual option activity, it's either May 22nd or May 29th for the longer term guys. And that's just how short everything is. Well, just the other day, they were buying Facebook. They were buying this Friday expiring, May 22nd, 220 calls. Now, those were going for about $1.25. Yesterday, those peaked out around 10. Today, don't even look. I mean, it's just craziness to the upside, a big, powerful move. One thing that did lag yesterday, however, was retail. When you took a look at some of those names in the pre-market, didn't look so bad. But by the time we started to get through the rest of the day, that was one of the weaker points of the market. Now, the volumes were okay yesterday. They're still a little bit below normal, so that was something that I think stood out. That was day 2 of seeing those volumes start to pull back a little bit. But as we get into today, I was working out this morning. Markets were down about 80 points, 100 plus points, somewhere in that range. And as we got closer and closer to the opening, we started to see some positive moves. And then before we knew it, you look over at the market was up about 100 plus points in the first 45 minutes or so. Well, they're giving some of that back right now. I'm taking a look over at the TV, and I should look right here at my phone. That's right on top of it. We're now negative. So we were up a little over 100 plus points to the upside on the Dow. Then we went negative. Now, what was negative long before that and struggling even to get anywhere close to green, but it was getting closer to flat, was the NASDAQ. So the NASDAQ's had some pressure all day. Right now, the NASDAQ's down about almost 1%, while the Dow's barely down. It's down, but barely down, about 25 points on the Dow and about 0.5% on the S&P 500. So that's where the movement is. Now, when we were seeing the big, powerful move to the upside, where was that move coming from? It's really coming from, and really, if you compile everything, a lot of the defense type names, Lockheed Martin, definitely one of those names that stuck out. Raytheon stood out. I look at Boeing. Boeing was absolutely on fire earlier. Now that might be pulling back right now as we speak, because those were the names that really were powering a big move to the upside, and the financials as well. Travelers, one of those Dow names that we don't talk about very often, but up 5%. That's a pretty powerful move for a name like that to the upside. And you don't see that all that often. So the other area where we've seen a surge, and I talked about some of the weakness yesterday being in retail, take a look at some of these discounters. TJ Maxx, Ross Stores, just explosive moves to the upside. Where did we see a lot of option activity recently? We've had the June 47.5 calls in TJX. Those exploded to the upside. Then what did they do? They rolled to the June 52.5 calls. And right now, that's all there is they don't have the maze. So that's all they've got. So they've got those, and those are exploding to the upside today. I always say discipline dictates action, DDA. That's an expression we use all the time. It's just to remind people you got to be disciplined. When you get these kinds of moves in various names that are just exploding to the upside, you do have to decide what are your targets, and you've got to have a game plan in place. And doesn't mean that can't be changed a little bit, the Mike Tyson theory, but everybody goes in with a plan until they get hit in the face. But you do have to use some discipline, and that is something Mike Tyson always used to talk about as well, right? So you got that big move. Now, that I mentioned Facebook. How about the idea of this? You go back to Tuesday. Facebook's trading about $215 a share. You come into yesterday, it's trading from 216 all the way up and starts exploding to the upside. And this morning we capped out so far at 237. It was 215 to 237 in just a blink of the eye, really, in the big picture of things. And we had, like I said, we had some option paper in there that really has exploded to the upside. DDA, that's all I'm going to say about that. Now I look over at the price of oil, still trading higher. And again, today, a nice move to the upside, trading over 34 today. So that was something that really stood out. Gold getting hit a little bit. I mentioned gold going up, 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 up. We talk about holding on to 1,700. Yesterday it was around 1750. Today, a little bit of pressure on gold. Not huge, considering the move that it's made. You'd expect some pullbacks along the way, but it's down about 1.5% today. So that's something to keep an eye on as well, just out of the corner of your eye. So we talk about unusual option activity every single day. I mentioned Boeing and the big move there. I was in Boeing. I'm out of Boeing. But right after I get out of Boeing, what do I see? More buying in Boeing. I'm not back in yet because these are so short. These expire tomorrow. Again, I mentioned everything short term. The May 22nd expiring, 145 strike calls, trading for about $1.50, give or take. Stock was trading about 138 up to about 140, somewhere in that ballpark. The initial buyers got in a little bit lower. Stock started to move. They started to pay up a little bit. So I'm giving you a ballpark average price, about $1.50 for those. Now, you've got today and tomorrow for Boeing to make that move and make that actually work. So just keep an eye on that. That's part of the discipline too. Do you feel like this time frame is giving you enough time frame? I don't know. I have not made a move yet myself. I can tell you that. Looked at it for sure. I just had got done trimming, as I mentioned, and then suddenly you see this. So that's something that happens fairly frequently. We see that a lot because there are certain names that just have been very, very consistently hitting on our unusual options activity. As a matter of fact, I'm looking over at our unusual options activity. It's pretty interesting. When I look at the last 2 days, we talk about some of the slowness in terms of volumes in the derivatives markets. We have had incredible days of incredible amounts of unusual option activity still hitting on the site, despite the fact that we've come down. Now, let's all keep everything into perspective. When I say come down, we're talking about we were averaging, we had like that 4 or 5 days back to back where we were trading about 31.5, 32 million contracts on average. Well, that has dropped down now to about 26 million the last couple of days. Still huge numbers by any other comparison in any other year except for this year. And we all understand why with this whole pandemic, everything that's going on, volumes have been absolutely explosive, continue to be so. And so for me to look at 26 million and say, gosh, see, things feel a little bit slow, I need to keep that in perspective as well. Folks, have a great day of trading. I talk about the options all the time. That's who we are. We are Market Rebellion. We talk about a lot of the derivatives markets and what we are seeing, and oftentimes it's where leverage does live. And so because of that, you have to educate yourself, though. You don't want to be that guy who just decides to jump in without having the understanding of all the mechanics of how things work. It's one of the reasons why I emphasize all the time when I'm talking about specific unusual is, wow, these are really short term. Wow, these are a little bit longer term. So that is something you have to really understand, and the pricing models, all of that. We have the best educators in the business, no doubt in my mind. Market Rebellion. So enjoy your day. Have a great rest of your morning and afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow morning on The Take.